Hey, y'all. Hey, welcome to the PowerWomen podcast.
This is a show where powerful women share their journeys, discuss powerful issues, and the men and women who help us rise.
And we are your hosts with three very different backgrounds and very different perspectives. I'm Brandy Jo Newman.
I'm Gayatri Agnew.
And I'm your power mom, Claire Brown. Hey, y'all. Hey, we are back with the PowerWomen podcast and another great guest today. I'm so excited. And of course, my co-host Gayatri Agnew is here. And Gayatri, who do we have today?
My goodness, y'all are in for such a treat. We have with us today the illustrious Dean of the Clinton School of Public Service based in Little Rock, Miss Dean Soto. And Dean, thank you so much for being here with us. I am going to shift gears and start calling you Vicky, which is your first name.
Yes,
but
please.
I think women of a certain status, prowess, power, title need to sometimes sit in the glow and glory of that title. So, Dr. Dean Soto, welcome to the PowerWomen podcast.
Yes.
Well, thank you for that introduction. I know a lot of names in there that she had to deal with, but here's the deal. Anytime Gayatri asks me to do anything, she doesn't even have to tell me what it is. I say yes.
Oh,
because I know the impact that she has, and I want to follow where that's going.
Well, you're very kind, and it's mutual. That's how I ended up co-hosting this podcast with Claire, because I said, well, okay, if Claire asks, I'll say yes. It's how I ended up on your advisory board at the Clinton School, because you asked me, right?
Yeah.
So I love this. Let's just jump right into it. This theme about women showing up for other women when there's a foundation of trust and belief. So, Vicky, my dear friend Vicky, to just say a little more about that, like help us understand. Well, first of all, why don't you give us just the quick, like, you are dean of the Clinton School, which is like the coolest thing to be doing. But give us the quick Vicky story of how it is that you came to be there.
Sure. So I was born and raised on the border, on the Arizona-Mexico border, a political science student council nerd since way back when. I ended up going into
Important question on that.
Yes.
What
please.
was your first student council role?
Yes.
And this is important, I think, because my daughter is 7. Vicky also we actually, I think, all have sort of kids of similar age. And it's so interesting to watch them, right? And all of a sudden, my 7-year-old's like, I'm probably going to do student council. I'm like, yeah, you probably are. But I'm curious to know for you, Vicky, what was your first council role?
7th grade, Sierra Vista Middle School, go Bobcats. It was an elective that you could take. And, I raised my hand. I'm like, this sounds cool. We get to organize things. And so I stood up. And then when we got to high school, it was now an elected position. So putting yourself out there, and over the years, I'm very proud of the work that I do and the titles that I have. But one of the proudest titles I have is student body president for the senior class of Buena High School, because I think that's really where I can trace back my love of civic engagement, of understanding when you get a really diverse group of folks together. We were one high school in a small town, so you had diversity whether you wanted it or not. But when you come together for little goals, like let's have a bake sale, to big goals, like let's organize a Hands Across the Border partnership with schools in Mexico, like that is where I started feeling that buzz that led me to study the social sciences, that led me to then do public policy, that then led me to do administrative leadership work at the university level, and that ultimately brought me here to the Clinton School, where the whole educational mission is about preparing that next generation of public service leaders and having that toolkit that we can deploy. So, I think it all goes back to 7th grade, me saying, I want to do it.
I love that so much. I'm going to let Claire get a question in, but I've got one more for you, which is, how long have you been at the Clinton School? And are there other power women at the Clinton School?
So 2 weeks ago, none other than Secretary Hillary Clinton was here engaging with our students, engaging with us here at the Clinton Presidential Center, talking about, kind of the expansion of the Presidential Center, where we're going to be housing her papers throughout her time as First Lady in elected office. And so I think, that's one that I think is just pretty clear.
Check
And most
box.
people would
Yes, check
right
box.
there. But and we have fantastic faculty and professional staff that are, check, power women. But you know who I look to and they fill my heart is my students, our master students who come here because they all have a why. Maybe, one of our students, and she speaks very openly about this, she struggled with substance abuse for years and years and years. And she wanted to find out how she can work with policy to implement change at a systemic level. That was her why. We have other students where education is their why. Another student who I just had lunch with today, her why is about sustainability and making sure our cities are moving toward a sustainability. So when I sit there with these students who are driven to change, are driven to do, and I get to help them chart out the how to their why, that is power in a bottle.
It is. It really is. And it's so cool because I feel that I've been able to be the vessel for Power Women and the privilege to get to watch that every day. And it's such a privilege that, you don't ever take for granted. And there's so much gratitude in that. And so there are people that listen to this that don't know what is the Clinton School of Public Service. I know the three of us know it very well, and I've had many friends that are graduates and gone on to do extraordinary things. And to me, it's a hidden gem here.
I know.
Yeah, it really is. It's a hidden gem here. And I don't want it to be quiet. And so what does it do? And who does it help? And the domino effects of it have been tremendous. So can you expand on that a little more?
Claire, let me just be shameless for a moment and say that to this podcast, even though I don't personally know you, I kind of know you because we are in this group, we are this community, this village. Ever thought of pursuing a master's in taking your public service impact, whether in the public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit sector, the international sector, to the next level? Talk to me, like literally, personally, email me. Y'all, please feel free to give out my email address. I want you to come to the Clinton School, and we will make it work. We have been fortunate to really get robust funding for those people who have that why and want to go to the next level. So shameless plug, take me up on this offer. We're going to be enrolling our online master's program at the end of May. We're accepting applications for the next 2-3 weeks, but if we need more time, we'll work it out for our in-person in the fall. Okay, I'm done with the shameless plug.
No, yes, I love that. Well done.
At least I preface it, right?
Yeah.
The Clinton School of Public Service coming up on its 20th anniversary, and this was the brainchild of President Bill Clinton, who wanted to see a toolkit that could be bestowed to people who want to have impact. But he wasn't too specific about where that was. And that's why he created a Master's of Public Service, because a lot of other master's programs are very specific about you're going into the private sector, you're going into the public sector, you're going abroad. But he said, I want to have folks who can make impact regardless, being agnostic to sector or issue. And so what we do is we build that toolkit with data analysis, with program evaluation, with a lot of field service learning. And so it's about a toolkit that's portable. And what we found, Claire, and you guys know this anecdotally, is that folks don't just change jobs nowadays, but they change sectors. So this is especially important because you know what? You may be working in your city government, but you're going to go and work in the private sector, and then maybe you're going to go back and work in the state government. So So there's that. The other piece that is, quite frankly, what brought me to the Clinton School is this learning by doing pillar that over a third of our coursework, of our credits, are outside of the classroom. So, I mean, you get the traditional classroom stuff, but we also believe that if you're going to learn about impact making or sustainability or education policy, we're going to match make and pair you with people actually doing that. It's highly mentored. So you're working with our faculty advisors, because you're still learning, but you're learning by doing. And the second kind of unique piece to the Clinton School is that all of our students for our in-person program, for the online program, it's a little bit different, but all of our students for our in-person program go abroad between their first and second year because we need a global lens in this global world. And so we have, this incredible toolkit. We have, Gayatri, you can speak to this. You've engaged with a lot of our alumni. Claire, I think you have as well. You name a sector, you name an industry, they're in it. DC, Arkansas, New York, Wisconsin, Africa. And it's this network of people who have honed the craft of having impact and go and do.
Influence with action.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
That's what I just heard.
You mentioned the alumni network, and I think, I think it's been 2 years. Well, how long have you been at the school?
So 2 years this past January.
Okay.
So, and you hosted for us at Crystal Bridges, our first ever Northwest Arkansas alumni gathering, which was awesome.
It was great fun. And I think that may have been the first time we had a chance to meet in person, but I was just reflecting on, I had a lot of FOMO about the fact that I went and got my master's degree elsewhere and am not a Clinton alum. But Vicki, you have been so gracious to invite me in and to welcome me in. And Claire, you're welcome. You are now in too, right? Into the family and community that is the Clinton School, of which some are the students and the alums, but then there's like these concentric circles that surround the school and what you guys are building. And I recently had an opportunity to join a webinar of current students and prospective students to talk about just my own journey in public service. I do work in corporate America, but I would say I do public service, even though I'm working at a company. And I was so impressed by just kind of the depth and breadth as you articulated. Like the students were so inspiring, the prospective students were so curious. But what I wanted to ask you was just about this. It is a school, right? So there's faculty and there are students, but there's so much more going on. And so can you just talk a little bit about the community and the network and just what that means, and maybe to just give your perspective in the context of women and women having access to networks, because I think sometimes, right, access into influential and powerful networks can be a little bit gate kept by gender. Sometimes, not always. Certainly not the case at the Clinton School that you lead, but I'd love your perspective around that, the network you're building and how it impacts the community and the students.
I so appreciate you zeroing in on the network piece because it is a critical component of power, of professional success, of professional impact. And what we have at the Clinton School is, like I said, we've got our awesome classroom experience, we've got our awesome field service experience, but then we have the network, which is the alumni and all of the field service partners. But I think where we are a little bit different in terms of the depth and the breadth of our network is that because we are so field service heavy, and we're, all of the field service projects have to be with a partner here in Arkansas, in, somewhere in the country, somewhere in the world, and they're carefully vetted because, you need to ensure that you can provide a learning experience of high quality. So we have this expansive network that we've built up over 20 years of community partners all over the world. Hard stop. But in addition to that, it's a very well curated list. It's not a haphazard list. It's the impact list of the who's who of making change around the world. So I think we actually have dedicated people within our Office of Field Service who go out and seek partners to have that network. So there's that, and there's also the alumni network, and every institution has that, right? You have the alumni network, but since coming, I have been very intentional, and this is something I wanted to do on day one, is build a more formalized alumni network, because, you know, your Clinton School experience doesn't end when you walk across the stage with the diploma. You are part of the Clinton School community, and you may be, 5-10 years out, and you go, you know what? I think I want a career change. Let me go back into my network and figure out, how to best navigate this, this turning point. So I think there's that. We've started using different tools, online yearbooks, so folks can connect more seamlessly. I mean, I know it's easy to connect via social media, but spaces that are just dedicated to Clinton School students. And the other piece of it, that our network, that our students know they can turn to, like case in point, Gayatri, is our Dean's Advisory Board. Our Dean's Advisory Board that are rock stars of impact from all different walks of life, that you are all committed to uplifting students. And so that is another incredible resource. And because we're so small, you don't get lost in the mix. I've been at those big institutions where the incoming class of 250. So for, the faculty and the Dean's Advisory Board to have more intimate engagement is tough. But when you have, 40 students, very highly curated cohort, that's a different story.
I love it. You said something in your response that I want to go back to, which is the relationship between your network and power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's flush that out a little bit.
There's
But
a little
also,
bit of
but
that
also,
there.
Yeah.
also maybe in
Just
the
a little
context
bit.
of like your own journey, Vicky, right? Like when you raised your hand to do student council back in 7th grade, were you like, obviously I am on a path to become the dean of the Clinton School one day? Um, is that how that went? Or
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah.
Spot on. Relationships, and we started off this conversation talking about the power of relationships, because there are barriers that are not spoken of, but
That's
that
right.
we know exist. We could call it a glass ceiling. There are a whole bunch of metaphors that we can use. And I got as much schooling as I could. I couldn't go any longer. I, am a hard worker. I'm driven, but sometimes that doesn't cut it. And I think that what is essential to navigating these complicated spaces, for which women and women of color have not inhabited for very long, is figuring out the networks and the relationships to navigate those spaces, because you don't get taught it in school. There's not, a core requirement on, how is it that you get yourself appointed to this? You have to figure it out. And I think that the one thing that has really helped me on my journey is that I have always sought out mentorship and advice, and along a spectrum. I have my ride or die mentors, from graduate school and from undergrad, but I'm also a big believer in micro mentorship moments, and having maybe periodical mentors. If I'm engaged in a project and I really don't know how to handle it, I'm going to look to someone who has done this before. So I think it's that formal education, which, I'm nerd number one, and that I want you to come to the Clinton School to get. But then I also want to support you on that journey of the informal education. And just literally yesterday, I was on a webinar for future leaders who want to pursue academic administration. So who want to be a dean one day, who want to be a provost. And the conversation centered on this, like, how do you build relationships? How do you navigate these complicated spaces? Because we're not taught it in graduate school.
We're
So
not
we
taught
need
it ever.
ever. And that's why we need these spaces right here, this conversation, Claire, because this is where we come together and we're able to pool our resources, quite frankly.
Yep. And so, another thing that we've seen for quite some time, we used to see in civics classes and U.S. history classes, we were taught a lot about leadership and values in our country. And that's not in the classroom as much anymore. And so, cultivating our future leaders of service. What does the Clinton School teach and instill in regards to leadership and values so that then permeates throughout the rest of our world? And how are we helping transition with that? Because there is such a lack of it.
So one point I failed to mention when I was describing the Clinton School big picture was our emphasis on communication, Claire. And like, I'm kicking myself for not saying this because this is key. And let me be real honest with you. When I was first approached about this position and I started doing my homework and learning about the Clinton School, I was scratching my head. I'm like, why do they have all of these classes on communication? Why is communication a core class? Like, because I came from a very traditional program. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Well, now I'm like, oh my gosh, why doesn't everybody do this? This makes perfect sense. That in order to have civil dialogue, to be able to generate shared values, you need to communicate.
Yeah,
and you
it's
need
a problem.
to communicate. And you need to communicate when people don't like each other and when conversations are difficult.
Yeah,
So
it's called fierce conversations, and being able to step into them respectfully and authentically is a lost art.
And you know what? It's not necessarily a gene you're born with. I mean, maybe some people are a little bit better at it than others, but we need that training. And that's why, so we have a certificate in communication and leadership exactly because of that. And also the leadership tools, how to reflect upon yourself, reflect on your environment. So, I think I'm going to just, vent here. People think sometimes that public service and that leadership is a gene you're born with. Like, oh, I have brown eyes and, this is my hair is straight or wait. Like, no, it is something that you need to cultivate and learn. And that is what we do here. Like, yes, you can go out and do good and volunteer for a day. But if you really want to have impact, you've got to know how to design a program, how to go back and monitor and evaluate that program, how to create spaces of consensus. I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's work that is so fulfilling and just takes a little bit of intentional dedication.
Yep. I love
All
that
right, I'm
so
done.
much.
I'm like preaching here. I'm like,
No, but that is so
good.
key. It's so crucial. It's so needed. I mean, I wish there was a Clinton school in every state.
Come here.
Well, fortunately, we take the students from every state and
That's
every part of the
right.
globe.
That's true.
Anywhere, everywhere to Little Rock, Arkansas. Vicki, one thing you mentioned in talking about leadership is you talked about the role of self-reflection and just like, there's the how are we leading others, but then there's also the how are we leading self. And I'm just curious if you might share with us either in leadership roles that you held at UT or as you came into your leadership role here at the Clinton School, like what are some of your own lessons that you've learned? I think just the hard way. There's not an easy way to learn a lot of these leadership lessons, but what have been some of those lessons and how did you work through those learnings, right? Because you get a lot right. I'll tell y'all, I've worked very closely with Vicki for a while and she gets a lot right and does brilliantly, but I know that's come from experience, right? From you maybe not getting it right one time and learning from that. And so share that with us, share any of those nuggets with us.
So I'm going to share one that's more in the professional realm, and then one that's in the personal realm. And the personal one I'm sharing because I think everyone, on the screen and listening to the podcast probably has had the same issue where you run yourself so ragged. And I'm a work in progress, but I run so hard. And then like Saturday comes around and I'm useless. I'm like a vegetable. I can't go out and do anything fun, and then I kind of regroup a little bit of my energy to go take the kids to tennis and go to the grocery store. And so I think I've been getting better at it, but really trying to meter out my energy level. Like just because there's openings in the calendar doesn't mean that like I have to be doing something, but that actually by resting, I'm more productive. So I think that that's one thing that I've learned and I continue to push myself on. In the professional space, patience. I think that that's a virtue, but I'm patient until I'm not. And and so I've had
In
some
true
experiences.
PowerWoman fashion, patient until I'm
Well,
not.
I'm great until I'm not.
Until
I
I'm
like
not.
you until I don't. Yeah.
And so in terms of a leadership role, I needed to learn how to be better, to give signals along the way, to be like, okay, let's recalibrate and have that difficult conversation earlier on instead of waiting until I'm no longer patient. So you can't like impatient all the time and like, but I've learned to patient. But that's probably not something you often hear.
No. But what I hear from that is you've recognized your limit. And so you've recognized when you need to have the conversation before you reach that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a huge self-awareness that most of us do not have.
It's learn from mistakes, Claire. I learned from mistakes.
Yeah, fail fast, fail forward, fail often.
I was just talking to somebody yesterday. I was in a very bad mood yesterday because sometimes we are. Sometimes we are, right?
Yeah.
And the kind of mood where like even when you take deep breaths before meetings, you're just gonna bring you're gonna bring the mood around with you. I personally blame the fact that we had one of those false spring freezes yesterday and the cold just put me in a really bad mood. But I was in a mood. And I was talking to somebody who was sort of saying like, well, you really need to just be, and it was a man, you really just need to be more even keeled all the time. And I said, I respect that you think that, but I live high highs and low lows. It's just how I live my life. And if I'm going to show up authentically, sometimes I'm not in as good of a mood as the day before, or maybe as I might be the next day. And for me, that's been a huge leadership lesson to let that be okay, because it actually takes me a lot more energy to function at this quote unquote even keel. And I'm not, well, Claire knows me. I am a little up and down. So like my up and down is
I am too.
less than I'm actually feeling it. That is me being even keeled. But if I try to hold like full steady state, that takes so much more energy for me that I'm then I'm not showing up authentically, but I'm also using my energy to behave like somebody that I'm not. Right. And so I'm just curious from both of you actually around because it was such a funny conversation. It was just yesterday and I was kind of thinking like, what does that mean to show up? And I think in so many of the spaces, Vicki, that you occupy, they have historically been really dominated by men, right? Like academic leadership circles, political leadership circles, even a lot of the history of the leadership of the Clinton schools, which was male. And that's fine, but you show up differently, right? You show up in an authentic way, but a way that brings in your positive feminine energy. And so I just, again, you're much more even keeled than I am. Claire and I probably share that whatever that energy is.
Yeah, when I'm happy, when I'm not. There's not an in between. There's not.
But look, it's the authentic self. It's from demeanor to how I dress. Where yes, I like I love my femininity.
Yes.
And fun with it. And if I love your earrings, Gayatri, and your fun glasses, Claire, and I've got my dangly bracelets on, and
Yeah.
And there was a Vicky who maybe 10 years ago would have checked herself and said, maybe blend in a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes that energy, energy that I could have been dedicating to, work of educating and creating spaces of impact. We're going toward moderating, to your point, Gayatri. And you know what? Let's use that energy in a more fruitful manner. And I think, again, it's a work in progress. I'm not saying it's perfect,
Right.
but recognizing that I am who I am. And in a way, my predecessor is the polar opposite of me, right? He is an older white gentleman from the South. I'm a Latina from the border. So in a way, it kind of made it easy to be like, okay, there's a clean break. This is Vicky and that was Skip, and they both do good things, but it's different. So in a way, it was good that I had kind of a clean break.
So my immediate thought when that was said to you is, did he want you to be less emotional?
Oh, always.
Yeah.
Always.
And that's
Because
what wasn't
I'm very
said.
comfortable with my emotions, right? Like I
Yeah,
had a team leadership
exactly.
call this morning and I started it
Mhm.
by saying, "Y'all, I am in a mood today." And they were all like, "All right, okay." But
Mhm.
I think the difference is it's not the emotion that creates chaos, it's the discomfort with the emotion. If I'm sad and I tell you I'm sad, it's okay that I'm sad.
Yes.
If I'm really happy and excited and I want to share that happiness and excitement, right? But it's when we somehow try to like muzzle what that is. Now, don't get
Mhm.
me wrong. I don't think we want to start every workday,
Yeah,
bursting
yeah, yeah,
into
yeah, yeah.
tears and that.
No, no, no,
But
no, no.
that's not what I'm talking about. But like
Mm-mm.
emotions are
Yeah.
beautiful. They're
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. They're
I
how we
mean,
experience and live life.
I'm gonna go back to Vicky's point of building community
Mm.
and relationships. If there's something I've studied, it's those two things. And to do that effectively is to be very transparent and with a high authenticity. That is how you connect. That is how you build true relationships with people. So if someone, no matter male, female, came to me and said, I think you need to be a little more even kill, which they've come at me and said that before. I think you need to be a little less aggressive. I've heard that many a time in real estate. And my response is, well, the way I look at it, it's been working for me for 23 years. Look at my record. The numbers tell a story. Would you like me to say happy birthday? Or would you like me to say happy birthday? How do you want me to make you feel? Do you want to feel important or not? Because I'm good either way. It's just your choice. You tell me how you want me to show up for you. Because I can act like I don't care.
brought you into the conversation. Now
I
I
can
see.
act like
I
I
should have
don't
phoned
care.
a friend,
Yeah.
been like, put Claire on the line.
I
But
can act like I don't care, or I can just tell you. Which do you want?
there it is.
Either way, I'm good.
Yeah.
This is a you issue.
Well, we don't have tons of time left. So, Dean Soto, I have just a closing question for you, which is just share with us in the 2 years you've been at the Clinton School, what have you seen as one of the most powerful things in terms of that? You were talking about how we aren't just born leaders, right? It's actually a set of skills that's taught. Just say a little bit more about that in closing, because I want to make a really explicit invitation to our Power Women community to be a part of the incredible network that you've built, whether that is as a student, whether that's the parent of a future student, whether that's a site that hosts a student through practicum placement or field placement. But say a little bit more. I thought that was so important when you said, right, like there are things about us that we are just born like this, but leadership isn't one of those things.
And it's not, and I think there's been an assumption that it is. And if there's a mission that I have, it's to knock that notion down, that we all are leaders and we all have capacity. It's just finding that specific why is. And so I think that if we start from a premise that everyone has the ability to lead and have impact, We just need to provide them the tools and the training to do so. It's very different than saying like, oh yeah, those people in government, they've got the skills, they're the leaders, or oh yeah, the people in the C-suite or the executive directors of nonprofits, they just, that's a natural path. No. I mean, if anything, I think a lot of people should go back to school and get a master's in public service to really be authentic and intentional leaders. So I think to kind of come back to your original question, Gayatri, it's understanding that public service is a skill and it is something that is learned both inside the classroom and outside of the classroom, and that anyone who has that why can chart out that path.
So well said. I love that so much. I can't thank you enough, Dean Soto, for your time. I know the value of it, and it is our greatest commodity. Thank you so much for sharing it, sharing your gifts, sharing for what the Clinton School of Public Service offers, and so that we can share it with others. And what a gem we do have here. And how can people contact you, contact the Clinton School when and if they do want to enroll? What does that look like? And how can we move this forward?
Absolutely. Well, first off, let me say what a treat it is to spend time with you today, to get to talk about stuff I love about, the stuff that gets me going. And I want more. We need to build an army of public service leaders, of folks who want to go out and have impact. So I would invite you, number one, to check out our website. Just put it in Clinton School Public Service, Clinton School, Google us, as my mother says, el googleo, and put it in. And then you've got a bunch of different ways, to email me or to contact our admissions dean if you're interested in getting information, or contact our Office of Field Service if you're interested in saying, hey, my company or my organization would be a great placement for a field service project. Get in touch with me, because I want to be part of the village of uplifting those of us, not just here in Arkansas, but nationally and globally, who are all focused on public service impact.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Gayatri.
Thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, please rate and review on iTunes, and check out our website, thepowerwomen.org.